What's up? Good morning. Jamie here. We get another week for building lives and the careers that we want. And this week, what I'm going to be breaking down for you is how to break a bad habit. So all of us have bad habits, and usually we try to break them in the wrong way. So what most people do is if they're doing something that they don't want to continue doing, they try to go cold turkey where they just completely eliminate this thing out of their life. And maybe they make it a couple days or a week or a couple of weeks, but usually it ends up breaking. And when it breaks hard. You double it, you triple it, you binge, you gorge in whatever that habit was that you tried to break before. So I'm going to walk through step by step how you can healthfully and sustainably break a bad habit and replace it with something that's going to actually improve your life, whatever that is. So let's get into it. All right, so step one is personal motivation. So the reason or the thing that is going to stop you from doing this habit is going to be completely different from other people. So for example, whether it's weight loss or stopping smoking or going to the gym or studying on time or not procrastinating or not sleeping in and getting up after the alarm, whatever the habit is or whatever it is that you're trying to change, what motivates you is different from everyone else in the world. And so because of that, you have to come up with your own reasons that will motivate you every single day. And anytime you catch yourself wanting to go back to the habit, you need to have this list on you. Literally, you're going to write this out and have this on you. So every single time, especially in the beginning, when you're still not used to breaking it, in the beginning, you're going to need to pull this thing out and read it every single time you catch yourself wanting to do whatever the bad habit is. So for personal motivation, there are only two things that motivate people. So the very first is pain, and the second is pleasure. All human behavior is driven by pain and pleasure. Why do you get up and go to work in the morning? Well, because it'd be really painful if you didn't, because you wouldn't make money, you wouldn't be able to pay the bills or feed your family or feed yourself. You'd starve to death and it'd all be bad. Very painful experience. Pleasure. Well, if you go to work, you also get to make money, which means that you can go on trips, vacation, go out to restaurants. You don't have to worry about, being kicked out of the apartment or your home. So there's, in every single thing that you do, there is pain and pleasure linked to the actual action, to the behavior, to the pattern. So what you want to do is think about your bad habit. And the very first thing you need to do is you need to create an understanding of short-term and long-term pain and pleasure. So what do I mean by this? So, for example, let's say that you have a very bad habit of oversleeping. You consistently oversleep. Your alarm goes off, you hit snooze, you hit snooze, you hit snooze, and then finally by the time you wake up, it's way past the time. You're always late to work, you're late to something, and it's because you're consistently oversleeping. Well, to break that habit, the very first thing you need to realize is, all right, there is short-term pain associated with it. But it's probably not that bad, because if it was that bad, you wouldn't keep doing it. So if there's not that much pain, you're probably just going to keep doing it. And so immediately you know that, all right, in the short term, little late. A little late to work. Which in your mind, you're like, well, we have a pretty lax culture. It's really not that big of a deal. Other people are late. So it's, 5, 10, 20 minutes. It's not that bad. So realistically, why this habit is continuing to happen for you is you don't have that much pain. It's not that bad in the short term. So now what you want to do is say, all right, this is short-term pain. This is here. But now what you want to do is extrapolate that out over 2 months, 5 months, 12 months, and you want to start projecting, all right, if this pattern, if this bad habit does not change, what is going to happen negatively to my life? What will be the long-term consequences of not changing this habit? Well, one is you're going to get a bad reputation. Because everyone at the office no one's going to count on you to actually be there. Your reputation is going to be, he or she's consistently late, he or she's not reliable, he or she may or may not show up. All of a sudden, you've created doubt and uncertainty in your reputation with people in the office. So all of a sudden, you have a weaker relationship with your boss. All right, so a weaker relationship with your boss. Well, how are these things going to affect you even longer term? Well, low/minimum bonus or comp. Probably not a promotion, no promotion. And so after that, then you're going to say, all right, stagnant. And your career flatlines. Now, that might seem like a pretty extreme case, but when you actually stop to think about what is my bad habit and why am I continuing to do this? Because if you're continuing to do something that you know is bad for you, then what that means is the short-term pain, the pain now is not that much. So for example, smoking. Smoking is a perfect example. Everybody knows it kills you. It literally kills you. And yet in the short term, so many people keep doing it. Why? Because there's no short-term pain. It's fine. It's whatever. They're literally kicking their death down the road until eventually 20 years later, now they have lung cancer or mouth cancer or some other type of cancer, and they go, shit, why didn't I just quit? Why couldn't I have just quit? Because there was no pain. And what you need to do is you're the one that has to sit down and actually start creating a list of, all right, the pain isn't so bad right now, but what'll happen if I keep doing this and keep doing this and keep doing this until eventually 12 months, 24 months, 5 years, 10 years from now, and you need to create a list with all of these consequences, the big compounding, stacking consequences that are going to happen if you keep this bad habit up. The pain must come first. If there is no pain, you will not change. If there's no pain, your behavioral pattern will not change. And so you need to create the pain for yourself by understanding and listing and truly feeling the long-term consequences of not taking control of whatever this bad habit is. So now, then the second part is pleasure. And you need to think about, all right, well, what'll happen in the short term, pleasure-wise, if I do this? Well, if you think about oversleeping, there's actually going to be a little bit of displeasure probably, because it's, all right, less sleep. Well, that's actually going to be a little bit of pain, less sleep. So in terms of short-term pleasure, getting up earlier, it's probably not going to be super pleasurable. But short-term pleasure might be better relationship, at work, and then consistently would be, all right, also would be time for projects or time for project/work. And then ultimately it'll launch, with that you're able to add more value. Improve skills. Ultimately just advance your career. The long-term benefits of waking up earlier and doing what you need to do in the morning as opposed to oversleeping consistently. And this is also going to be better health. Because assuming that you're doing your morning workouts or your morning routine in order to amplify your day and prime you for a successful day, well, you're also going to be taking great care of your body, great care of your health. And with a healthy body comes a healthy mind in terms of oxygen, nutrition, and just being able to perform at the highest level. That's going to massively affect your entire career. Now, smoking, going back to the smoking example. So we already talked about the pain, but now what about the pleasure? Well, the pleasure for smoking would be, all right, short term. It's just breathing. It's just not smoking. So there's very little short-term pleasure. But what you can do is start projecting out, all right, medium term. Well, better health and fitness. I'm stronger. I'm healthier. I can run further. I can breathe more clearly. I can, your cardiovascular system is going to be a lot healthier. How your body operates is just going to be a lot better because of how your lungs are attached to your blood system. And then if you think about longer term, well, I'll actually be around for my kids, for my family. I'll be around for my grandkids. I'll be able to see my son or daughter walk down the aisle. I'll be able to see my son or daughter have their kids. And I can be able to be a grandparent and raise those kids as well. So you need to start stacking on all of the pleasure of not smoking and actually living a long time, a long, healthy life. Because you might be able to live long, but if your lungs are failing and you can't walk and you're constantly out of breath and you can't travel or you can't do these things, you might be alive, but your quality of life is terrible. So for the smoking, you're laying out massive pain, but then you're also looking at, all right, if I do give it up, if I quit, well, I'm going to live a lot longer and have a better quality lifestyle. So whatever your habit is, you need to create your own personal motivation by just creating a sheet of paper and just thinking consequences and benefits. So what are the consequences of continuing, and what are the benefits of stopping the bad habit, of fixing the bad habit? And you want to create this sheet of paper and carry it with you all day, every day, until you've replaced this bad habit with the healthy habit and you're continuing to build that healthy habit. So with that, let's go to step 2. All right, so step 2 is don't eliminate. And I'll caveat for most people. If you know that you're someone who can go cold turkey and you have the mental fortitude to no matter what not break, there are some people who have that willpower that will sustain at least for the period of making the transition. If you can do that, go cold turkey. Why not? Make it happen. You're going to have the personal motivation to be able to keep you accountable. Now, if you know that you're not a person that can do the cold turkey and last, then what you want to do is don't eliminate. So what a lot of people do is they have this habit. Think of it like that. Think of the habit as a line, and it's a continuing bad habit. Well, the moment someone goes cold turkey, what they're doing is they're creating this giant void in their life, this giant hole that nothing is filling. And so that's why so many people break, is your brain has been wired. Your neurons have been wired consistently, and that's what forms a habit, is the neural connections and the neural pathways in your brain. So if you do something enough, it's going to build and strengthen that neural pathway, which is what creates a habit. Now, if you just all of a sudden just break that, it's almost kind of like you're just creating this void, and that pathway is still there. And all of a sudden that pathway is strong, but it's not being used, and that's the addiction part of it, the want to use it. And so what you need to do is you first need to replace it. You need to replace it with something that is the good habit. So for example, a lot of people overeat, or a lot of people eat unhealthily. Well, there's 2 different ways that, as an example, so let's say that someone overeats. They're consistently snacking, they're consistently eating too much, and they know it, but they just can't stop. Well, the very first thing they need to do is they need to go back to step 1 and create the personal motivation. What is the pain? What will happen in the short term and in the long term if I do this, in terms of both pain and pleasure? But then step 2 is they need to replace it with something. So if someone is, let's say someone's snacking and they're eating a lot of garbage food, they're consistently eating chips or crackers or something that's just, it's empty calories throughout the day. Well, the very first thing they should do is don't try to defeat the snacking habit. The very first thing they need to do is defeat the unhealthy food habit. So replace first the food with healthier foods that you can still snack on. So for example, one of the things that I love is if you take tomato or cucumber or any other type of vegetable, you just slice it up, drizzle olive oil over it, a little bit of salt, maybe some basil or something. It tastes great. And yet at the same time, you can eat as much of that as you want, and you're not going to gain weight or you're not going to gain fat because it's so low calorie, and it's primarily water. It's like 95 to 99% water in most fruits and vegetables. So don't eliminate snacking. What you want to do is take the food and replace the food with healthy food and snack on healthier food. Because that's what you're doing, is you're keeping the consistent habit of snacking, but you're replacing it with a healthier alternative. Then what you want to do is begin to reduce. So if you know that you don't want to be snacking and instead you just want to eat your primary meals and not consistently feel the need to snack anymore, well, you've replaced it with a healthy alternative. And now the next thing is slowly but surely begin to reduce the quantity. Another perfect example of this is smoking. So when someone tries to quit smoking, well, there's alternatives. They don't try to immediately just defeat the habit of doing this all the time. Instead, what they do is they replace it with a healthier alternative. So rather than a cigarette, they go to something like an e-cigarette. And then in terms of reducing and phasing out, which is step 3, what the people with e-cigarettes do if they're using it properly and following really trying to get off of nicotine is what they're doing is they're using different variables or volumes or strengths of nicotine packets in the e-cigs until eventually they're just smoking water vapor, which is nothing. And they finally realize at the end of that, I'm just smoking water vapor, and only then can they actually kick the habit of needing something to smoke. So going back to the food. So if you reduce it, you're reducing the intervals of the number of times that you're snacking until eventually you're phasing it out. So this can be used in almost any bad habit that you have. Don't try to just cold turkey eliminate it. Figure out and work with. You want to work with the habit that is bad for you, but you want to replace the bad part of it with something that is good, and then consistently follow that until you can reduce and phase out the actual habit itself. So that's step 2. Now let's dive into step 3. All right, so step 3 is you need to figure out how to game it. Now, what do I mean by gaming it? I mean that whatever that bad habit is, your habit is following this circle. So this is how any habit is created. And what we can do is when we replace, so step 2 was replace, reduce, and phase out. What we're doing is we're replacing the action. And so what we need to do is game it by giving ourselves a new reward. We need to reward ourselves for taking different action. And this is going to sound absolutely ridiculous, but we are conditioned in almost an identical fashion as any other animal on the planet. So how do you train a dog in the very beginning? Well, pain and pleasure. Pain is maybe they have a choke collar or a buzzing collar or an electric collar. And then pleasure is every time they do something great, you give them a snack or a treat. So it's a Scooby snack. All right. So trigger, action, reward. The reward, that's the pleasure. And if something doesn't do well, we also need the pain. So we are conditioned like any other animal, both pain and pleasure. Now, let's say to game it, let's say that the smoking is an example. Well, the trigger, what actually triggers this response? So every habit, every behavior, every action that we have is triggered by something. An external stimulus in the environment or a thought that we have triggers us to immediately take that action habitually. So, for example, smoking. A lot of people smoke when maybe when they're on break, or maybe when they go outside, or maybe they have specific times in the day where they smoke, and that time is literally a trigger. So, or eating. Let's say that a snacking, someone who consistently snacks, they're bored, or they're watching television, or they're watching YouTube, or they're on their phone. Like whenever they're not doing anything really, they're just chilling. All of a sudden, that triggers if they have the habit of snacking. Oh, well, you know, I could be eating something right now too. So all of us need, in order to break a habit, you first have to identify what is the trigger. If you don't understand the trigger, you're not going to be able to catch yourself in those moments and replace the action. So step 2, we talked about replacing the action. Now this step, game it, is you need to come up with a way to reward yourself for the first week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or however long it takes you to actually do it. Now, I'll give an example. How did I consistently get myself to work out in the mornings? Every single day. Well, the first thing I did was personal motivation. Why is this extremely important to me in terms of pleasure and health and benefits and all affects all areas of my life? But then the pain. What will happen if I don't do this long term? Early death, decaying body, all these things, all the negative things that happen if you don't take care of yourself physically. So then the second part was I phased out the action of oversleeping or not doing what I need to do in the morning. But then the third thing was I gamed it. So the trigger was my alarm. That the moment the alarm went off, I changed the action, which is get up, go across the room, unplug my phone, turn off the alarm, and pretty much I'd put my workout clothes directly on top of my phone. So the moment that I was up, I'd walk across the room, turn off the alarm, get dressed, and then go work out immediately afterwards. I rewarded myself with coffee. So I would not allow myself to drink coffee unless I worked out in the morning. That became my reward. And it also made me, excited about it over a period of time because I'd finish working out and immediately know, yes, I get to go have my coffee and breakfast. And that was how I gave myself a reward. So whatever it is that you're changing, you need to realize that your bad habit actually does have a reward. If you're smoking, it's the pleasure of the smoking experience. If you're overeating, the reward is the literally the taste, the eating part of it. So whatever you're changing, you need to give yourself a reward, because if you just do this, if you just try to replace the bad habit consistently, but you never reward yourself, it'll never turn into a habit because it's just going to be all pain. And life is pretty miserable when something is just all pain. So give yourself a reward. That's step 3. And then final step is step 4. All right, and step 4 is the easiest. Change your environment and your community. So I'll give a couple examples here. So changing your environment. Let's say that, going back to the snacking or overeating example, if you have junk food in your house, don't think, oh, well, I'll just eat it over a longer period of time because I already bought it, so I don't want to waste it. If you're serious about changing and not tempting yourself and not giving yourself that option to fail, change your environment. Take all that shit and throw it out. If you know you have stuff that will tempt you, throw it out. Your health is more important than the money. Or smoking, if you know, all right, I hang out with a certain group of people who, and not me, but for this example, let's say that you hang out with a certain group of people who always smoke. Well, if you don't want to do that and you're trying to break that habit, if you keep hanging out with those people, you're going to keep smoking because it's in the environment. It's there. It's easy. It's tempting. You're just going to do it. Or let's say that the workout, if you know, all right, hey, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do this in the morning. I need to build this habit. Well, if you need to, change your environment. So move things out of the way. Go buy a new pair of sneakers that you feel incredible in. Or maybe you just need to sometimes join a gym. There are some people who just need to join community workouts or group workout sessions because, one, they actually begin building relationships with the other people there. But 2 is other people begin to notice their transformation. And it's kind of like this internal hype chamber of people hyping each other up. So it's whatever it is that you want to do. The first thing you need to realize is your environment this is what creates the trigger. Your environment creates the trigger. So if that trigger stays the same, if you don't change the trigger, or if you don't consciously be aware of this, then your environment is going to keep negatively triggering you into that bad habit. So the other thing is the community part. And I know that we've all heard this. You're an average of the 5 people they hang out with. It could not be more true. It is so, so true. And the other important thing is your habits, your behavioral patterns are massively affected and conditioned by the people that you hang out with, because we as human beings have a need to belong. We need to feel like a part of the group. And so if that need and that group is negative or not good or is a bad habit, what you have to do is choose a different group, belong to a different group, because that group is going to pull you higher rather than drag you down, which is what the other group is doing. So the final and arguably one of the most, the strongest steps is change your environment and change the group of people that you're around, because that will massively affect you. So I hope that this week, it's Monday, you get a fresh week ahead of you. I hope that you take these 4 steps seriously and you stop and think and actually take the time in step 1. Write down what is the pain, what is the pleasure, short-term and long-term. And then step 2 is think through, okay, what can I replace this bad habit with? Not trying to eliminate the habit. I don't want to create a void. I want to keep the habit, but replace the bad part of it with something good. And then step 3 is you're going to need to trigger action reward. You need to create a new reward for yourself that's exciting or you look forward to. And then the 4th part is change your environment and change the people if need be. Awesome. So enjoy your week. Start crushing those bad habits, transform them into good habits. And our lives, our futures are completely based on our actions, and our actions are based on our habits. So if you want to change your life, this is where it all starts. You got to change your habits. Our habits equal our future. So with that, have an outstanding week. Take care. We'll talk soon.